What's going on, guys? This is Ryan Peters for Stuck in the Catch Fence, a new type of video, and it's a let's talk about it. So, obviously, a lot of things happened here over the last weekend here at Richmond, and everybody's got their opinions out. But my opinion to you guys is I just think it's now clear more than ever. We as NASCAR fans, we as NASCAR drivers, not me personally, but NASCAR drivers are never ever going to align on what they want, what is fair, what is foul, what is allowed, what shouldn't be allowed, and overall what makes us happy. This week, with the move by Austin Dillon of wrecking both Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin, maybe was the greatest thing ever to me to have a self-realization of what it is that I want out of NASCAR. What I want as in terms of happiness, what I want in terms of entertainment, what I want as in terms of things that I'm now able to accept. You see, I had a fantasy football draft on Sunday, hence why there was no post-race report, and the only thing that went out was a few shorts, which you guys have received really, really well, so I appreciate that. But I have a TV rolled up in my basement to the fantasy football draft so that I, from afar, can watch as I'm doing my auction league for my fantasy football draft. You see, I love NASCAR. I don't just do this because it's something that passes time. I thoroughly enjoy the sport. And whenever you schedule a fantasy football draft, you realize that there's only certain times and certain places that people can meet. This was the perfect time. And well, historically, if you're going to have a fantasy football draft, using it during the Richmond night race isn't the worst time. So that being said, still able to watch it. I am the auctioneer slash commissioner. So my time is devoted to my fantasy football league, to my friends, but the NASCAR race is still on. We paused once Ricky Stenhouse and Ryan Preece, congrats on that jackassery, got together and caused what is the mayhem that we have now all seen. Austin Dillon rightfully going to win the race, and then has to pull out the double banger move of the century of knocking not just one driver out, but two drivers out to win the race. And the hypocrite nature that we as fans have in NASCAR struck me first. I have been one that has proudly been on the NASCAR as a sport. It's very, very difficult. I don't just think that it's a sport. I think it's one of the most difficult sports in the entire world. I think that driving a sports car at the level that these guys are expected to drive with other people around them in the conditions that they're able to do so with such a consistent nature is one of the hardest things. Not every single person can do it. It and baseball to me are the two most difficult sports. And when we see those things and the difficultness of it, I go to bat for my said sport. I have been one that cannot stand people being wrecked to win a race. It flies in the face of sportsmanship, ethics, integrity, all those different things. And I tried to stay on that hill for a very long time. And I'm not saying that I'm coming down from that hill. I'm just saying that I'm a hypocrite because I had 9 other people watching this race. Some may have never watched a NASCAR race before. Most certainly not live. Most certainly not during its time slot. And all of us gathered around in what was a beautiful moment to watch the green-white checker, to see people that don't historically watch NASCAR all cheer together at the same time. And I'm giving high fives when Austin Dillon did the most egregious moves ever to win a race. That flies in the character and the precedent of what I've been on this channel and other channels before and said that I deem is acceptable. So what has changed? Was this just a moment of me being excited for other people to watch and enjoy a sport? Was this just because of who was involved in Denny Hamlin or Joey Logano? Or is it just a culmination of me evolving my views over time? And I think it might be more the latter. Well, yes, I want everybody to see the calamity that is NASCAR. I also want the sport to be respected, But I think I'm coming from a place now where NASCAR itself has turned what is a sport more into an entertainment style of business. And my views of the sport have migrated that way. Could that be, as a Kyle Busch fan, because my driver is no longer relevant from a competitive stage this year, that I just want to be entertained? That's possible. I'm not saying that it is or is not. I guess I have to do some more inner reflection to know if that is indeed the case. What I'm saying is, if NASCAR never takes itself seriously and it's just a water drip of effects, putting Jeff Gordon into the playoffs because you make your own rules, taking away penalties that you enforce like you do for Hendrick to then take them back, to not ever worry about ever black flagging somebody due to reckless driving. The business of NASCAR and the, more important, inconsistencies of NASCAR, I feel like have molded me to the point to where something that I would get on air and crucify Austin Dillon, instead I was giving out high fives. The same thing, and it's not just me. Look at Denny Hamlin. Look at Joey Logano. Denny Hamlin made the statement: if we don't have a line, or we have a line, but it's an invisible one, so how do you know when you cross it? He then very much so used his own podcast to go out of his way to say how terrible it was after having a time to reflect, talking about how it was laughable and all these other things. Denny Hamlin is a villain heel in this sport because of the things that he's done on track. You don't just become a villain outside of one person because of things off the track. Bubba Wallace is the only person that has become a villain in this sport because of things off the track. 99% of the time, you become a villain by what you do on the track, and it then precipitates, it either enlarges or decreases depending upon how you act off the track. Denny Hamlin more recently has become the heel of NASCAR, and it has made him more popular in a way that people ingest what it is he is doing off the track in his podcast, but also people's eyeballs following him because he is now a true championship contender. I don't know if people would have thought that before, but they most certainly do now. And the Netflix show, him being a huge part of it, did not hurt either. Joey Logano, the biggest smiley face hypocrite that there ever was. The first to bitch and the last one to have ethics on the track. He will complain about a block and then do one twice as egregious. He will complain about being wrecked and do it as immediately as he possibly could, just like we saw when he did it at Darlington for Byron, just like we've seen against Matt Kenseth, just like we've seen against Kyle Busch for fourth place for no reason. You see, as a fan, maybe my views are just evolved the same way drivers have. I say things, but when rubber meets the road, do I really feel that way? You see, my views have changed since I began this channel, since I began talking about NASCAR, since I began wanting other people to, since I've wanted this sport to grow. I want it to be entertaining, so you watch. Football is entertaining. Baseball is entertaining to me. But NASCAR has lost some of its luster, and I think a lot of times because it's lost some of its personality, its charisma. You see, there's only been one charismatic driver consistently until he went over to the Chevy team, and that was Kyle Busch, willing to speak his mind. And as you see, when he does that, when he carries the torch, because Kyle Busch is an historian of this sport, he realizes the importance of self-promotion. When he goes on the Pat McAfee show, people love to watch it. People, non-sports fans, non-NASCAR fans love to watch it. It draws interest. We've also seen him go on shows with Pac-Man Jones, with Brandon Marshall. Kyle Busch is the only one that understood what it takes to be self-promotion from a standpoint of being entertaining. Those guys that we lost before, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, that have now retired, Dale Earnhardt Jr. to a certain extent, they're so bland that NASCAR has had to intervene to make the sport controversial, to make the sport willing to talk about. Now, have they done it in a way that is probably the best when it comes to our technology and the use of social media? Absolutely not. They're still very old school on that front, but they have said, well, these other sports offer this, a playoffs. We need to do the same thing because our drivers simply don't want to put in the work and do what it takes to self-promote the sport. So that's where we are today. That's why we get what we get. When you have to win to get in, NASCAR said, we will bring you said entertainment. You drivers go out there, fight like hell, and do what it takes to get into the said playoffs. Austin Dillon took the assignment seriously on Sunday at Richmond and said, I will do that. And then the rest of you go, are ye not entertained? The transformation of what we used to know about the sport and how we are transforming, evolving ourselves is constantly changing. The same people that would complain and bitch and moan about what Austin Dillon did would be the same ones that when that 3 card rattled Terry's cage said, rubbing is racing. You see, we never know what we want. And when we don't know what we want, somebody's going to give what we want for us. They're going to make what we want manufactured because we're now in a day and age where we don't freely think. We have to have somebody do it for us. And NASCAR and the France family said, I have the solution with the NASCAR playoffs. So somebody that sat here and complained about people being wrecked for a win is now celebrating it. Drivers that bitch about being wrecked for a win will do it the very next week. We have lost the charismatic nature of an old Kyle Busch that people love to hate. We lost somebody like Tony Stewart, who everybody adored because of his passion, again, to say what he feels and to look Carl Edwards in the eyes and said, I wouldn't just wreck your grandma, I'd wreck my grandma, I'd wreck anybody to win a championship. And the reason why that still held weight is because we believed him. The man wrecked Carl Edwards' soul into retirement. Those are the lines, those are the actions that made this sport popular. And now we as hypocrites continue to change and change and change. We don't know what we want. One day we want this, the next day we want that. We want to be entertained, but if we get a boring race, so we give it a terrible score on Jeff Gluck's poll, even though it's more like a representation of what old NASCAR was, we still don't know what we want until somebody holds our hand and gives it to us. Austin Dillon could forever change the process of the playoffs if NASCAR looks at this publicity, which it won't, because this is what it wanted to do. It had to manufacture this and say, hey, maybe wrecking 2 people is a little bit too far. Well, if you can wreck 1 and it's not too far, who cares if you wreck 2? The same person complaining about being wrecked then goes on pit road, almost hits a mother and a child, and then does a burnout in front of people that he did not compete against on the track that wrecked him. You want to call chicken shit to being wrecked, but you almost hit pedestrians and then do a burnout to people that did not do anything because you yourself are a chicken shit and will not get out of your car and do anything about it. Again, we do not know what we want. And what we do think we have an idea, we constantly change it. So, Austin Dillon did what was forced to be done because we, as a society, allow it to happen by not investing wholeheartedly, continuing the same tone, continuing the same drumbeat But yet here we are talking about it nonstop. Here we are putting out shorts nonstop. Here we are opening Sports Center, and the very first thing they talk about is NASCAR based upon what we want. So nothing's going to change. We are in the entertainment business. NASCAR said it themselves. So take this like wrestling. And I know that's hard to do because if you're like myself, it's become very difficult. I could not get into wrestling because I thought it was fake. The storylines, the known outcome. While we may not know the outcome anymore, what I'm able to do now as I get older is be entertained. I'm willing to open myself to be entertained. Guys, there's nothing we can do to change the outcome in sports. We can be loud, we can be boisterous, we can do all these things to show our dedication. But the goal of the people running it is to make money, and the goal for ourselves is to be entertained. If you will not allow yourself to be entertained, you're going to miss this fun ride that we're on with NASCAR this year. Austin Dillon, thank you for entertaining me. We will have a live show tomorrow night, the weekly show here on Stuck in the Catch Fence. Myself, Joe, and Travis, hopefully we'll all be there. And we will break down the upcoming race as we go to the not-so-hilly Irish hills of Brooklyn, Michigan at Michigan International Speedway. Joe will be on TikTok streaming out races. We will have a racing league that will be a qualifiers. And starting in September, I will broadcast such league. I believe Joe's going to participate in it. If he doesn't participate, he will be the one conducting the rules and things of that nature. So we hope to have a lot of fun with that. Joe and I will also do an episode on what we've learned now 6 months after having iRacing ourselves. So again, my name is Ryan Peters. Hopefully you like this new style of video. Hopefully it's entertaining to you guys. And if you would like to subscribe to the channel, make sure you never miss any NASCAR news or just some thought process of where we are in the sport itself. And tomorrow we'll break down the actual penalties. Will Joey Logano get a bigger penalty than Austin Dillon? That is a possibility. So for Stuck in the Catch Fence, stay safe and God bless.